Nigel, we call ourselves publisher and author now. We don't refer to ourselves as Louise and Bruce. And I want to thank you, Ray. I mean, I was delighted when you accepted the launch. I've long been an admirer of yours. And as Ray mentioned, I was once favourably compared to him by Gerald Stone, who, as he mentioned, we briefly explored redefining the landscape of current affairs in this country. And in fact, we shot a pilot for a new nightly current affairs program, which became Today Tonight, basically, but started off as real life. And I remember after the pilot, we had a riotous dinner in Sydney, and he said, "Bruce, you remind me so much of Ray." And forgive me, but I said, "Ray who?" And he said, "Well, there's only one Ray, Bruce, it's Ray Martin." I said, "Well, I'm very flattered that you would say that." He said, "Look, the pilot's gone really well, the Channel 7 board loves it, and together we're going to reshape the current affairs landscape in this country, and let's get together next week and we'll redo another pilot, and then we'll take him on in January." And I never heard from him again. So that was my experience of television, and it's recounted in a chapter called TV or Not TV. Like me, Ray has sort of wandered far and wide in his chosen medium. I think there's been 60 Minutes and Current Affair and the ABC and Channel 9, and I guess I've done broadsheets, I've done tabloids, I've even done Who Weekly and People magazine. But what I've always admired about Ray Martin is that he's always brought enormous integrity to the work. And I'd like to think that people saw me in the same light, but that'll be for others to judge. It was funny, Ray mentioned Johnny Raper, and I do it all in a flash. I just completed an interview with Kerry O'Brien upstairs that will be put to air tonight or tomorrow night in the 7:30 report. And he asked me the same question, would you do it all again? And we've already mentioned Woody Allen, and I'm going to mention him again in a minute, but Woody Allen once said, I think it was in Annie Hall, that he goes to the psychiatrist and he says, "Well, I've got a problem, my brother thinks he's a chicken." And the psychiatrist says, "Well, Woody, it's easy, you sit him down and you patiently explain that he's not a chicken." He said, "Well, I would, Doc, but I really need the eggs." And I think when you're editing newspapers, you put up with the madness because at the end of the day you need the eggs. And maybe I still need the eggs, and we'll wait to see. But Woody actually went on to say one other thing, and he said that if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your future plans. And he had a point. If you'd said to me 40 years ago, when I was beginning to think about a career in journalism, that I'd one day edit all of Melbourne's major newspapers and several national magazines and work in New York on a couple of American magazines, I would have suspected that you were using illegal substances. Indeed, if you'd said that to me this week, 2 years ago, when I was the reigning Newspaper of the Year editor and flying pretty high at the Herald Sun, that 1 month later I would be sacked summarily, prompting a writ, a court case and a book, well, I think you were flying pretty high too. The Newspaper of the Year win is kind of worth pausing at. It was one of those rare moments in your life that we didn't expect to win. We're up against The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald and I think for some strange reason the Manly Weekly or something, but we won against all expectations. And I got up on stage at Jupiter's Casino and I clutched this glittering prize, walked downstairs, immediately rang my wife and I said, "My God, we've won." And we'd been looking to buy a new house in Melbourne. And she said, "Well, does that mean we can buy the house?" And I said, "Sure, they can't possibly sack me now." So I probably got that one wrong, but anyway. And 4 decades ago, I was a 16-year-old growing up in Broadmeadows with people like Frank Maguire and, of course, his brother Eddie. We're all trying to stay out of trouble. I'd had my first taste of journalism the previous year at the Broadmeadows Observer, which was the weekly giveaway, and they published my weekly reports of the Broadie Bandits under-15 team and how they'd fared on the previous Saturday. As I recall in the book, throughout the season I would write 4 or 5 paragraphs in longhand and drop them under the door of the Observer on a Sunday night. The benefits were many. I got some understanding of newspaper practices. I experienced the joy of publication, the occasional horror of editing, and regardless of my performance, I made the best players list every single week. Now it's fair to say that my efforts for the Observer didn't suggest a long-running and high-ranking career in journalism, just as my efforts for the Bandits didn't usher in a VFL career. But somehow I made it to the Melbourne Herald about 2 years later, and the rest, as they say, is a book. Man Bites Murdoch is actually a personal history of almost 4 decades in print. It's not just a rant about Rupert Murdoch and, you know, he did me wrong. It begins with those first rather clumsy efforts of the Observer and ends with a court case that grabbed headlines around the country in April and May of this year, giving me more sleepless nights than I care to remember, but of course a dramatic ending to the book. It came about thanks largely to Louise Adler, who kick-started the project in December 2008, barely a month after my departure from News Limited. And I've got to say, Louise's drive, energy and persistence never waned, ensuring I met her absolutely outrageous deadlines. And I don't think I missed a deadline. Originally, Louise and MUP Chair Alan Kohler, who I'm also enormously grateful to, envisaged a slightly different book, one that would examine the challenges facing the newspaper industry and chart what some people see as its relative decline, but on the basis that Noah is a better story than flood control. I felt it needed a person to tell it through. And then we realised that I was that person, having enjoyed a front row seat at the many seismic events that helped shape the print industry over the past quarter century. I hope that it's not too indulgent. I'd like to think it's informative, entertaining, occasionally wise, and perhaps even inspirational here and there. If you work at a senior level in newspapers, for long enough you're bound to have highs and lows, and I've had my share of both. But I've learned along the way that adversity can often be a better teacher than success. Often it's simply a matter of dusting yourself off and getting back into the fray. People have asked me why I did the book. And the simple answer is, well, because I could. The smart aleck answer is that, well, Rupert gave me a payout, so I thought I'd return the favour. But the real answer is that I thought there was a good story to be told, and any journalist worth his or her salt can't resist a good story. The book also inevitably raises a number of issues, not least the future of papers and whether they're compromising their journalism to stave off circulation falls. And I think, unfortunately, there is evidence of that. There's always tension between the marketing and commercial arms of newspapers, but as sales come under increasing pressure, the line that protects public interest from corporate interest is becoming more and more blurred. Now, inevitably, the book also examines the corporate and journalistic culture of News Limited, and I conclude that the company has a problem, and it's a cultural problem. There's many wonderful journalists and editors at News, and by any definition, Rupert Murdoch is a great Australian and will be remembered so in history. But News is so focused on outcomes that they sometimes forget proper process. And this failing, I believe, explains the phone hacking scandal in Britain that's now unfolding, the Melbourne Storm debacle here, and perhaps even my own downfall and the subsequent court case. All of them could have been avoided if News paid more attention to process. The end doesn't always justify the means in journalism or in business. Man Bites Murdoch might also give people pause to consider the realities of litigation. I was astonished this week to have 2 separate interviewers ask me seriously whether the trial was a publicity stunt to sell books. It reinforced my belief that few people understand the enormous pressures that go with legal action, particularly when you're taking on a big, big company. Once again, I'd like to express my gratitude to the legal team that so successfully prosecuted the case, and many of them are here today, and I'm enormously grateful and eternally grateful. As Dickens might say, the court case it was the best of times and the worst of times. But frankly, I was a little embarrassed that my matter took up 6 days of valuable court time. I think there must be better things judges could be doing, and it convinces me that our Attorneys General could perhaps strengthen court mediation processes. Having made those points, I'd like to think that my criticisms, or any criticisms in the book, are written out of sorrow rather than anger. Certainly I've moved past any bitterness. I look back on my career in newspapers with enormous gratitude and fondness. I suspect I had the best of it. I'm even grateful to News Limited for the opportunities they gave me along the way. Finally, it would be remiss of me not to thank a number of people at MEP. Fung King Long is here somewhere, I think. Where are you, Fung Ling? She kept me on track throughout the writing of the book. Susan Keogh, performed some miracle saves in the final stages of the editing. Cinzia Cavallaro coped marvellously with my many tweets and final weeks, while Terry King and Jackie Gray have done a wonderful job of marketing the book. One of the happiest outcomes from the project was finally meeting the woman who saved my life at the Austin Hospital more than 50 years ago. Loris Figgins, who's sitting at the back of the room, was a young doctor back then who cured my tuberculosis with some inspired treatment. Without the book, we probably would never have met. Finally, I want to thank my wife Jan, who's sitting here in the front row, and my kids, Susanna and Scott. Of course, it's now well documented. I seem to be saying in every interview that Scotty came up with the title of the book and has demanded a new electric guitar as a result. We'll have to see how sales go, Scotty. But I think the title alone has guaranteed that I'm probably certainly off Rupert's Christmas card list, and I think now on his to-do list. So, look, thanks so much for coming today. I hope you enjoyed the book. Thank you.